So let's start. I can start by giving you a little bit of an intro to who I am, and then we'll wait for Jen to come over. First of all, my name is Simon Taylor, and we'll be joined by Genevieve Taylor. We're not married, we're not related, just want to point that out first off. But we are good mates, so that's all right. But yeah, my name's Simon Taylor. I am a butcher. So that is my role in being here today, and I give the angle of the end part of the meat journey of agriculture. And the reason that's important to me is because even though when I started it wasn't really my passion, it has very much become so. I'm very passionate about the meat I buy, the meat I sell to my customers, the connections I've made with my customers, and it's very important to me that meat comes from the right sources. As I said, joined by the lovely Genevieve Taylor.
Am I on?
Who's responsible for the... Did everybody try some? Had some?
It's like feeding the 5,000 out there. It's all gone. So you guys did well to get in first, I'm afraid. I thought actually it might be good for me to start quickly before Simon gets too much butchery, just to let you know what you ate, because I didn't get a chance to do that when I was giving it to you.
I hope you all check the allergens before you had it. Health and safety.
Yeah, I filled in the allergy sheet.
Perfect.
Nobody's dead, are they? So I had 2 whole beef shins. Simon, give me the demonstration.
Indeed they are.
That bit.
Beef shins. And they were these shins.
Oh, front shins.
They were front shins. They were 4 shins.
Front shins. And I run the Bristol Fire School in Bristol, obviously, and I smoked them over my barbecue with whittle and flame charcoal and a little bit of cherry wood, and I smoked them for 8 hours, rubbed in sort of jerk spices, so thyme, Scotch bonnets, sugar, a lot of garlic, I've got my 18-year-old son to kind of peel sort of 4 bulbs of garlic for me, ginger, lots of good gear, marinated for 12 hours, smoked for 8 hours, braised for about 4 or 5 hours. So that's what you ate, and we just finished it with some spring onions and coriander.
Very nice.
So a lot of cooking on the bone, all that kind of marrowy goodness should have gone in there.
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously we'll start talking about this more, but this kind of cooking method, we touched on it earlier, we did a little talk earlier, and we're basically saying cooking the right piece of meat the right way.
Yeah.
And although we are probably preaching to the choir a little bit in here, those kind of messages can be quite difficult to transfer to our customers. So something that you might know through generational connection and knowledge that's been passed down through families, some people might look at you like you're mental, that it's going to take 14 hours to cook dinner, something like that.
Exactly. And you'd be amazed at how long things can take to cook. And actually I think that sometimes the problem with, obviously I'm a specialist barbecue chef, people feel under a lot of pressure to cook everything really, really bloody hot, and actually that is completely the wrong way to go about fire cooking. You should be cooking the majority of things slowly, gently, take your time with it, and that's where sort of flavour and pleasure lies, really, rather than, steak is really the only thing I would be cooking very, very hot.
Which is a great point, because again, when we talk about steak, we'll touch on this later, we're talking about a muscle that has done very little work. So as a general rule of thumb, the lower the muscle to the ground, the more work it's done, so therefore the lower and slower you cook it. So gentle heat, give it some time. The higher up you go, when you get to the back, when you get to the steak muscles, that muscle's done less work, so you can cook it hard and fast. But one thing that Jen was talking about there, as she was talking about the journey of her cook, the things she used in that cook were quality ingredients. So not only the beef, we know the beef is amazing. The beef is from Pasture for Life, and so it's purely pasture fed, really, really well raised. We're touching on, again, preaching to the choir, but you guys know this, we're touching on environmental, welfare and nutritional points. We're doing things the right way, the way we would like it to be moving forward. So Jen's had an amazing ingredient there.
Yeah.
She's then added in other ingredients. The one thing she touched on, which you may not have picked up on, was the fuel that she used.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get confused. They don't think that fuel is an ingredient, but it very much is.
So I would say that the fuel for me is 100% the most important ingredient with fire cooking.
I think it's meat.
I'm currently...
It's definitely meat.
It's fuel. It's me. It's fuel. It's also the skill of the person cooking. But starting with the fuel is absolutely critical. And I'm just finishing writing my next book at the moment, and I wrote a line yesterday, and it went something along the lines of this: none of us particularly have any control over where we buy our gas and where we buy our electricity. But we absolutely have 100% control about where we buy our charcoal and our wood that we cook on. And I think it is so important that we spend the time to think about that. So for me, that is the starting point. The quality of the meat is absolutely critical as well. And I don't cook meat that I don't sort of know where it's come from, but I would never cook that meat on fuel that I didn't know where it had come from.
Not a packaged barbecue from the petrol station.
Absolutely not.
No.
I mean, the problem is my charcoal maker is at the back there. Give us a wave, Matt. Matt from Whitland Flame,
Matt.
best charcoal on the planet.
It is very good charcoal.
But most of the charcoal we buy in this country comes from the tropics, and it's full of the utmost utter shit that you wouldn't want to be cooking your food on, especially if you'd forked out some amazing amount of moolah on some beautiful beef that you guys had raised in the best way possible. Would you then want your consumer to cook it over charcoal that was full of chemicals and probably came from the Amazon rainforest?
Yeah, again,
you wouldn't, would you?
Yeah, again, when we're talking
There's
about,
no connect there.
we're
for me.
ticking a lot of boxes along the journey,
Mm.
and then you just have something. Am I right in thinking that when we import coals and woods, they're sprayed with a decelerant,
Yeah.
and then when they get here,
Yeah.
they're sprayed with an accelerant?
I mean, the problem with
that right?
charcoal is charcoal is highly, highly combustible, as we all know. This is why we buy it to barbecue with. The people that ship it over from the tropics have to negate any possible chance that catches fire on its journey here, because that would obviously be a catastrophe. So very often that charcoal is sprayed full of chemicals that suppress the fire, so it doesn't catch fire on its journey, and then when it gets here that it needs to get another double whammy of chemicals so that we can light it to burn our sausages on a Friday night after work. So can I just say, can anybody hold their hand up here if they've heard this before? When you're cooking with charcoal, you have to wait until it's white and ashy before you can cook on it. Hold your hands up if you've heard of that.
I'm putting my hands up because I've definitely heard it.
It's bollocks.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, there's no children here, is there? That is invented for charcoal that has chemicals in it, because you have to burn those chemicals off before it's palatable and or safe to cook on. So with good pure lumpwood charcoal, it's a very pure carbon product. Carbon is completely inert substance. Good lumpwood is 95% pure carbon. It should have no smell, no taste, no smoke, no flavour. So if you open a bag of charcoal and it has smell, don't burn it. Please don't burn it.
Yep. We like the word carbon here, don't we?
Carbon's good. We
we're
love
actually
carbon.
not afraid
Carbon's
of carbon
a good
here.
thing.
And that links really nicely actually to the meat that we're looking at, because again, we're looking at good farming method, and I'm not shading any other farming method, but this is a really well thought process where what we actually end up with is not only is it ticking all those boxes, but actually we're now finding that it's more nutrient dense. So like we're saying about those ingredients, we've taken time, we've chosen the right ingredients, and actually when we get to the table, when we go through all these processes, we've done all our good work, we've got some great charcoal from Matt, we've got our brilliant beef. What we're actually putting on the table for our family is something that's safe, nutritional, and delicious.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe while you might want to talk through that dish a bit more, I'm just going to start cutting this piece of beef. Anybody know what this is?
Beef.
It's not a pork chop, no.
It's like a beef chop.
Quite possibly the best answer
Beef
I've
chop?
ever had. I won't forget that. This is the ribeye section. So this is the ribeye section. I'm actually going to trim it down into a tomahawk.
Yeah.
Because we're going to look flash and royal or whatever. But actually, the reason I've got this here is because this is a quick cook piece of the meat, which we're then going to go off, and it might go to staff lunch, or if you follow us far enough, you might even be able to get to taste it. But this will become what will be the first PFLA accredited Wagyu farm. So we're going to have a fully accredited British Wagyu farm. This is pure Wagyu, British Wagyu. You probably can see from there some of the marbling. Obviously, you can see it nice and close, Jen. You're close enough to it.
Yeah.
But this, you can see the fat on the outside, and just from touching it and already on my board, it's like, can you see the shine on my hand?
Good
So
gear.
straight away, the difference in the fat from the breed of the animal, and we get this across all different breeds of animal. Each animal will exhibit certain qualities. The Shinner beef you had was a Sussex, brilliant breed, brilliant Butchery breed, full of flavour. The Wagyu here has fats that will melt at lower temperatures, and thus they will spread through the meats nice and easily. What I'm going to do, I'm going to trim this back. When I do, I'm going to trim away this short rib section. Now again, like the shin of beef, short rib, traditionally we cut here, keep that as a short rib, cook it separately, which we still do. The only reason we do a tomahawk is for theatre. And a lot of people will frown on the theatre, but actually it's an experience. Food is an experience. Food is communal. Food is something, you know, if you want to show off with your mates with a massive tomahawk steak, go for it.
It's definitely not the best way to cook a steak, though.
No, there are
I can talk about that in a minute. When he's put his microphone down and he's got his knife in his hand, he can't talk. I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'm holding on to it so he can't.
I can tell you the best way to cook a steak.
One thing I will touch on quickly. We can see the coloration change. So I'll just touch briefly on aging beef. Now, the shin of beef that was cooked, you can almost cook that straight away. You don't technically need to age it, because you're going to cook it so low and slow, you're going to break it down anyway, and all that connective tissue is going to break down. So why do we mature or age our meat? First thing, you're an expert in this as well, you could probably do this. 21 days. 21 days is all you need to mature a piece of meat. Yeah. Because after that, what happens is the enzymes that break down the connective tissue, they sort of run out of steam, they run out of power. So if you're thinking, I'm going to have a 6-week dry aged steak because it's going to be so tender, it's the same tenderness that it was after 21 days. So
the longer aging, to my mind, that's about developing flavour.
Exactly.
So the enzymes do their work of sort of breaking that meat down over the first 21 days.
Completely.
And then it's about maturing. Just like you would have a mild cheddar and a mature cheddar, it's like developing those flavours.
Yeah, and thank you for the cheese note, because now I'm going to go into something else.
Oh, sorry, did I?
No, that's good.
Did I take your
No, that's good. So when we think of dry aged beef, sometimes we do think of like sort of funky, cheesy notes. And there is a reason for that. The sort of white stuff that you get on the edge, the moulds that grow on there, we get a lot of penicillin-based moulds. And one of these penicillins is Penicillium Roqueforti. So no prizes for guessing Roquefort cheese, which is why you get that connection and that funkiness. Yeah. It's also why a blue cheese sauce works really well with dry aged beef. Just because you need something else to go with it, you need something to wash it down, we also get certain types of yeasts. Now, does anybody know what Saccharomyces cerevisiae is? See a row of hands going. Did you? Well done.
It's what? What was that?
It is a yeast. Yes, it is. It's a brewer's yeast. So it's where we get beer from. So basically, beer, blue cheese sauce, dry aged beef. Try it. All links beautifully.
Sounds quite nice.
Anyway, I'm going to cut this up and I'll let you talk meat.
So how are you going to cut it? Tell us what you're going to do. You're going to take off the ribeye. You're going to. I'm going to French trim it. Very long. Because we all know long is better, don't we? It's not better. So the French trimming is just taking off all that extra. What would you do with all of that?
Hello. So all this trim. We don't waste anything, so if we're not making stocks or tallows with the fat, the meat trim would go into burgers. This piece here is going to be extra large, so I probably would sell it actually as a whole cut. If I wasn't going to sell it as a whole cut, then I would put it in a dry-aged rib cap burger. And what we usually do is we mix garlic and salt with that, and the flavour is delicious. Almost there here. So all of these kind of scrapings, obviously none of it's wasted, and this is extravagant. We wouldn't usually go quite this mad, but we are in a field at Groundswell, so why not?
Are you going to take that the rib bit off the back?
The cap.
Yeah, no, this bit. What's that bone? That's the ribs, is it?
Back plate, yeah. So back plate would usually come off, but again, you can cook with that. Actually, it is just another level of flavour. This is OTM. Anyone here familiar with OTM? It's basically just slightly older beef. So they have to remove the spinal cord after slaughter. Just do some safety checks. So actually, this has already been trimmed back a little bit. So I might just leave that for flavour. Now, if we wanted to, we'd literally leave it as so. So leave it, almost hit me in the face. Almost leave it as one massive show-off steak. And I was going to say, I wouldn't actually remove that because it would be delicious. And again, you can see my hands, I'm sure. It's literally the Wagyu fat is melting. But I will just trim that dry face, just so you can see it.
So the back plate here, I wouldn't cook a steak with that on, because what that's doing when you're cooking a steak, has anybody heard of the Maillard reaction to do with meat cookery? It's a chemical chain reaction between an amino acid, which is a protein, and a sugar. So it's not caramelization, which is burning of sugars. It's a chain reaction between a protein and a sugar. It's browning, basically. It's the browning reaction. Maillard was a French chemist, and he discovered this reaction, named it after himself. Of course he did. But basically, brown things, we all instinctively know that brown food tastes better. So if I steamed this steak and put it on a plate for you, and it was like a little bit grey on the outside, and then I served it next to one that had a beautiful brown kind of lovely crust on the outside, we all know which one would taste better. It's just instinctive. But that browning, that searing is the Maillard reaction. So the goal with steak cooking is to get maximum Maillard reaction on the surface of your steak, browning. And the problem I find sometimes, if you've got sticky outy bony bits, all that does is prevent the actual meat contacting the fire and the heat source. So you're kind of missing out on flavour potential. So this chemical chain reaction, the Maillard reaction, the browning, it creates hundreds and hundreds and hundreds potentially of new flavour molecules. So brown food tastes of more. So the goal is to make it as brown as possible without overcooking the inside. Simon and I have probably got slightly controversial views on cooking steak, because I always cook my steak from absolutely fridge cold, very cold. Occasionally I will freeze a steak and I will cook it from frozen, which is very controversial. But it gives me more time to develop that Maillard reaction. So if I've got a thin steak...
It is controversial.
It is controversial, but it works.
Yeah, to be fair, Jen first put this online, and I thought she'd gone mental.
Shut up, Jen.
Yeah, I genuinely thought she'd lost it. But actually, I get it. And just because we've been sort of shown something or swept into a theory doesn't make it true. So do try it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is...
I'm not going to say she's right.
Don't say I'm right. It's fine. All these things are here to be tried and tested. And I think as a cookery writer, I've written many, many, many cookery books. And I learnt to cook from cookery books. And the person who wrote the cookery books that I learnt to cook from also learnt to cook from cookery books. So I think sometimes what has happened is Chinese whispers. This is how you do it. That's how I learnt it. I write it in my book. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. And this thing can snowball, I think.
I shouldn't say this as a butcher, but it sounds like farming.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. It's like, I think sometimes myths can get perpetuated because you read it in a trusted source. So you wrote it down in your book. And, so I've sort of learnt to have a fairly questioning mind. So I've sort of started questioning the things that I've been told. Absolutely.
And again, like this just links back to this beef, this sort of... It's not a new idea. We know it's not a new idea, but this whole pasture-raised, pasture-fed movement. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, it's a journey. It's not easy. There has to be some learning along the way, but that's what it is. It's learning. And again, I'm almost slightly annoyed with myself that I brought the Wagyu. It is delicious, and it is the latest body of beef that I had in the shops. It's one I brought with me. However, the pasture-finished... products that I've had through my shop have been marbled beautifully, absolutely beautiful. And much like with this cooking theory, where you think there's only one way, you have to stick to the way. It's not true.
There's a lot of ways to skin a cat.
Absolutely, and the only way you're only going to way to do it is skin a cat.
Skin a cat.
Not going there.
Test
the only way to do it is to try it. Well, let's not skin cats.
So just really quickly, because I probably didn't quite explain myself with the cold beef thing. So if I want to eat a steak rare, 52 Celsius, and I've pulled it out of the fridge and let it go to room temperature, 20 Celsius, what I've got, my maths is absolutely appalling. I've got like 20. to
I don't know where we
something.
started.
I've got a little bit of Celsius to go to get my steak super brown. Maths at the back. 32, yes. So I've got 32 degrees to play with to get that steak cooked perfectly. If I take my steak out of the fridge at 4 Celsius, I've got 32 plus a little bit extra. I've given myself another 14 Celsius to play with to develop that brown crust without kind of crucifying the centre. That's my logic. And if I've got a thin steak, I wouldn't cook a thin steak out of choice. I would prefer to cook a big steak to share. But if I've got a thin steak, the margin of error is even smaller.
Yeah.
Because the heat transfer from the hot grill bars into the cold steak, because that's the movement of heat energy, is going to happen way quicker than if you've got a thick steak. So by chilling that steak right down, all I give myself is more time. There's no more mystery and magic to it than that.
And reverse sear?
Reverse sear. So reverse searing is what I would do with this steak. Big, thick sharing steak. I wouldn't consider reverse sear on a steak that was less than 4 or 5 centimetres.
Agreed.
Even a little bit more, because it doesn't really work. But on something like this, reverse searing is cooking it very, very gently off to the side of the fire. So in fire cooking, we talk about direct cooking, which is over the heat source, the infrared heat, and indirect cooking is cooking off to the side. So reverse searing, you would start your steak very slowly off to the side, bring it up to a even temperature top to bottom. And that has benefits because it dries out the surface. Dry surfaces promote better Maillard reaction, and also it just means that you've got less chance of overcooking that surface when you come to sear it, because the whole thing is you don't have to kind of sear it for quite so long.
And you also get more medium. So for example,
exactly.
if you take your steak like this and you apply the heat source straight away from the outside and you're trying to get the middle to 55 and then suddenly you hit 55, where my fingers started, you only get that much of your medium.
And the outside will be absolutely beyond well done.
Yeah. But when you reverse it, what you do is you get the whole piece to that temperature. So you get the whole piece to, like, say 55. Then you caramelise the outside and then you get much more medium meat, as it were. So it's a much better way of doing it.
It is.
It is. Amen. So I'm not sure how we're doing for time, actually. How long are we going on for, Nigel? Oh, good. We'll keep going. Why not?
And then some questions.
So, again, a little bit more about myself. So I'm a butcher. Been on this butchery journey. Been butchering for just under 30 years. Was never really proud of what I do. I was quite embarrassed to be a butcher. Again, I'm sure for you guys, do we like Clarkson's farm? Is it good? Good. Yeah, good. Love him. So I would love for someone to do that for butchery as well, because what we've got professions that should be respected. Farming for one. If you're unlucky, you might have to see your doctor a lot. If you're normal like us, you might see your doctor once a year, twice a year if you're unlucky. Your farmer, well, you need multiple farmers more than 3 times a day. Every time we arrive at that table, we need a farmer, and we kind of forget that. We kind of lose that respect. Same for butchery. And we've got an issue with that in that we don't have enough people coming into our trade. So the reason we look to do the best thing we can, to partner with the best farming procedures that we can, is that we're really trying to shine a good light on what we do. We're trying to be good in all aspects of what we do, from the butchery, the farming, the cooking, every way along that journey. We're trying to get up to the right pinnacle so that people can look at us, respect us, and ultimately bring more people with us. It's not exclusive. We're trying to get people in. So in butchery, we're really, really trying to do that. Love to lean on the farming community a little bit, because you guys get it a bit more than most. But encourage people to go into butcheries, encourage people to support butchery and promote it. And in turn, we'll be able to do more for you. I don't know if anybody does sort of small butchery work or small parts off their farm, but it's really difficult because we just don't have the numbers. And abattoirs, I don't know if you've seen the mobile abattoir over there, very exciting. But small abattoirs need to be protected as well. I'm going off on a butchery tangent, Jen, stop me.
Well, it's more, for me, as the sort of end consumer, it's like following the chain to the end, isn't it? The farmers who are farming, this amazing beef,
Yeah.
you know, that animal needs as much respect in the pan or over the fire as it does when it's being grown. That's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're like the middleman of
Yeah.
respect, aren't you?
Well,
If we all treat the whole thing with respect.
Yeah, it is the whole journey. The whole we always talk about field to fork, farm to plate, all those kind of things, but we'll often just leave out the bits that we don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
Butchery's one of them. Butchery's this little dark art that nobody really wants to admit to, but it has to happen. But yeah, the whole journey's got to be there. And again, highlighting back to why we're here and Pasture for Life Association, the efforts that they're making to deliver this product to us, we then have the the confidence to pass on, to be confident in the product, and be honest as well. There's a lot of dishonest stuff that goes on in my trade, so the fact that we can be genuine about this is amazing. Anything else from you, Jen?
Well, I don't know. I mean, so this beef here, so you would hang that over a fire and reverse sear it, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would.
So just hang it super gently over a fire.
Hang it up.
The bone in this case is just like absolutely purely for sort of show. So in the
it's nature's tongs.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's like giving you a nice little handle.
Yep.
So you don't have to have a big bone to cook a good steak.
No, you can cut this down. So the ribeye muscle in the section. The ribeye muscle in the middle section.
Yeah.
So that bit, that's the ribeye.
Yeah.
Then the back cap is the fat on it. Short rib coming off. So coat the buff when it's cut shorter. Tomahawk when it's cut longer. But again, just because I've brought a ribeye with me, really good quote from Pasture for Life is that we need to be elite but not elitist. So you don't have to come to my shop and buy a tomahawk or a ribeye on the bone. You can come to my shop and buy shin of beef, which I'm sure you can all agree was delicious. You can buy mince, you can buy braising, you can buy a secondary steak.
Well,
so
it's about taking a whole animal approach to meat eating, isn't it?
Yes.
If we all ate fillet steak, what happens to the rest of the cow?
Absolutely.
It gets wasted.
There's not much of it.
So certainly it's about using every single cut in different ways that we can.
Yeah, and even that we've fallen out of love of the stocks and broths, and cooking with beef dripping is all I ever do now.
I guess fat, sort of historically over the last couple of decades, fat has had a massive kind of bad reputation.
The issue is it got demonised with the rest of meat. So it got massively demonised. We won't go into Ansel Keys. Does anyone know what Ansel Keys is? Okay, so Ansel Keys basically, he was the one that started the whole cholesterol gig of animal fats, demonised the consumption of animal fats, when actually animal fat is a nutrition source.
Yeah, and we now know is sugar is the big problem.
Exactly, yeah. So, have some hydrogenated vegetable oil will be great for you. No, it won't. Natural animal fats is where it's at. There is a nutritional value in the fat, so don't be scared of it. But again, in that, we can make stocks, broths, dripping, lard, whatever it is.
I think quite an interesting thing, just from a kind of cooking perspective, is that pasture-reared beef and older beef, the fat is yellow because they're gaining all the carotenoids from the grasses, and that's why you get this beautiful colour, and that's a sort of real indicator to me that this is super high quality.
Yeah, and again, you can see this is a slightly older animal. You've got the lovely yellow coming out of the fat, and that does happen when we sort of start to bring it up more to room temperature as well. The yellows will start to come out. But again, on those things, again, it's the nutritional value that we've completely forgotten how good it is for us. It used to be that you get a cold and you have some soup. Yeah. There's a reason for that, because it's really good for you, because it used to be made out of good produce, going in a pan, all going in, and the flavour's delicious. Get some beef bones from your butcher, make sure they're good beef bones from good farming practice, make a stock, use it across everything. So good.
Fat is flavour, that's what we say.
Absolutely it is, yeah. Fat is flavour.
I'd just like to say, again, a massive thank you to these guys, because they've been immense supporters of the Pasture for Life movement. They continue to help us, week on week. And if any of you guys want to get involved with the community, please come over to the Pasture Life tent later. We can further the conversation. So hope you've enjoyed it, and see you again soon.